I found this top at the thrift store. What really drew me to it is the color, and the fabric is really stretchy and it has this ribbing detail, but I'm just not in love with the style. It's a little too long and it's just not very me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to thrift flip it into a cropped tie front top. And instead of just cutting up the blouse and then, tying a knot, I am going to be using the So New Sunny Vibes blouse pattern as a template so I can get really nice shaping for the tie pieces, and it has a facing so it's finished nicely on both sides, and I can cut the facing from the excess fabric in the back, and I think I'll get a lot more wear out of it because I have just been loving sewing and wearing high-waisted pants, and so I need more cropped tops to go with them. So let's get started on this thrift flip. Using sharp scissors, cut up the side seams. If it's a more fitted design, I would have stitch ripped the seams. Fold the front right sides together, matching up the side seams. You just need to make sure the bottom portion is laying nice and flat. Lay the front pattern template on the center front fold so you can get the entire tie piece within the top. Then pin it down in place. Don't worry about aligning any side seam shapings with the size line. The pattern template I'm using is for a woven, but can easily be used for a knit too, like I am here. Cut out using a sharp pair of scissors or a rotary cutter and mat. Now we have our outer front tie band pieces. Fold the back top together, making sure not to catch any of the front. Place the facing along the fold and as much as it can be fit into the piece. It's okay if it extends beyond the side seam because the width of the top will remain practically the same. Pin the piece down and then cut it out. There is some stitching extending into my tie pieces, so I'm just going to stitch rip those out. Now I'm going to straighten the back hemline using a ruler. Then using up scraps from cutting, I'm going to finish the back hemline with a band. This will also make up for some of the lost length. But before I pin and sew the facing, I'm going to do that stitch ripping. Pin the facing right sides together with the front, matching up all of the curved edges. You could apply some knit interfacing if you want, but I want my tie pieces to remain elastic, so I'm not. I'm going to sew all along the outer lines and curves, as well as the center back of my band. So I can open it, then fold it again against itself to match or slightly stretch it into the base. The first thing you want to make sure you do is set your sewing machine up for knit sewing mode. I have my stretch and ballpoint needle installed and ready to go. Then I'm also going to select my fabric type as well as a stretch stitch. First, I'm going to sew the back bands right sides together. Look, my seam is nice and stretchy. I always like to do a little test before too. Now onto the front. I'm making sure not to stretch the fabric much when I'm sewing to prevent rippling seams. I'm removing some excess stitching from my back band piece and then leveling it out before I attach it. Fold the back band in half widthwise, wrong sides together, keeping the allowances laying open. Then locate the center back of the top and mark with a pin. Then you can start to pin the band seam at this point so there is equal stretch on either side. Stitch together from side seam to side seam. Stitching that all together. So my front of my tie top, well, my new tie top is finished by this facing, and then now the back is finished off by a band as well. So now it's time to flip things right side out in terms of the facing and then stitch back up the side seams. But before I do that, I'm just going to trim my allowances and clip into my corners. Sometimes I just don't have patience for scissors when doing allowances, so I use my rotary cutter to kind of cut closer to the seam. You just have to be really careful that you are not cutting a little bit more than you intend to, especially on lower layers. So I'm just gonna go and trim all around my round tie facing. you've trimmed all the way around, just kind of reach in with your fingers and just pull out those tie bands. This works so good in a knit, especially a thrifted one, to really give it a new look. And the tie bands are nice and stretchy, so you can even cinch in the top too when wearing it. Super excited to see how this turns out. So I'm just going to pin this just to remind me to do that. Then I'm gonna head over to my machine and I'm going to stitch up my side seams. Now there is a mismatch in my side seams, but you know what I'm going to do, because there's nothing better than, you know, gathering something to make it fit. I mean, look at the top I'm wearing. I obviously love gathers. So I'm going to run a basting stitch right here and then gather it up. And it will give the top another pretty element along the side to complement that tied look. So I'm gonna hand stitch my facing, go to the machine, gather in this edge, and sew it to my back band, and I have a new top. Can't wait to try it on. My final step is to just hand tack the facing on the inside. Just try and catch as little possible fabric when doing these little whip stitches. All right, it's ready to try on and tie up. Oh, that was so much fun, and I just love my new tie top. You can tie it low for a little keyhole, or you can tie it up tighter, and in the knit it really works well because the tie bands are nice and stretchy and they can even cinch in the waist a bit more. And then I love the little gathering stitches at the side. I would have just never worn the top before, and so now I'm gonna get tons of wear out of it with all of my high-waisted pants. Then while my sewing machine was already set up in knit sewing mode, I decided to do another knit thrift flip. This one from t-shirt to turtleneck using the sleeves. I found this dress, I really liked the fit of it, so I didn't want to do anything to the long sleek silhouette. So what I did is stitch up the sleeves and use that as the inset to make this turtleneck shape. The stitching on the top neck edge was actually the sleeve hem, so I utilized that stitching already, and I think it turned out so great.